The emergency klaxons shrieked through observation post Theta 9, and I swear by the 7 moons of Carthex, I nearly dropped my datapad into my morning nutrient paste. Commander Vrel's voice crackled over the comm system, each syllable dripping with the kind of confidence that comes from 300 successful planetary subjugations. All units, this is a Code Vermilion situation. We have identified the target facility. Educational Complex, Sector 7, Planet Designation Earth 3. Estimated resistance, minimal. Estimated casualties, 0. I exchanged glances with Corporal Thex across the tactical bay. His secondary eyes were doing that nervous flutter thing they always did before we invaded primitive worlds. And Earth? Oh, we'd been watching Earth for cycles now. Adorable little rock, with adorable little primates who barely managed to figure out combustion engines without blowing themselves up every other Tuesday. "Sir," I ventured, pulling up the surveillance feeds on my holographic display. "The thermal scans show approximately 30 life forms in the structure. Should we wait for reinforcement protocols?" Vrel's mandibles clicked in what I'd learned to recognize as amusement. "Lieutenant Crix, these humans still use physical projectile weapons. Their military response time is measured in hours, not nanoseconds. We'll extract the research data, neutralize any witnesses, and be back on the ship before their so-called authorities even put on their primitive uniforms." Famous last words, as the humans would say. The insertion went smoothly. I'll give us that much. Our cloaking technology rendered the dropships invisible to their laughably basic radar systems. We materialized outside what their databases identified as Westridge Community College, a small educational facility specializing in something called liberal arts, whatever that meant. The building was unremarkable by any standards. Red bricks, glass windows that wouldn't stop a level 1 pulse blast, and architecture that suggested the designers had given up halfway through and just slapped a roof on whatever they'd managed to build. Very human. "Thermal imaging confirms targets in room 204, reported Specialist Korn, her sensory stalks twitching as she analyzed the data streams. 17 life signs. Heat signatures consistent with young adult humans. One instructor figure at the front of the chamber. "Perfect," Vrel hissed, his weapon charging with that distinctive whine that preceded so many successful operations. "Remember, quick and clean. Stun protocols only until we secure the data cores. Then, full suppression." We breached the exterior wall with shaped resonance charges, silent, efficient, beautiful. The humans inside didn't even notice until we were already flooding into their corridor, our tactical formation absolutely flawless. I'd trained for this scenario 600 times in simulation. The door to room 204 yielded to Thex's override sequence, and we poured into the space with weapons raised, ready for the screaming, the panic, the delicious chaos that always accompanied first contact with species who thought they were alone in the universe. Instead, we got something else entirely. The room fell silent, sure, but not the terrified silence we'd expected. More like the silence of a predator that just noticed you walked into its den. 17 pairs of human eyes locked onto us, with expressions ranging from shock to confusion to, and this is the part that should have warned me, calculation. "Nobody move," Vrel announced in perfectly translated English, courtesy of our linguistic processors. "You are now subjects of the Carthexian Empire. Resist and face immediate termination." One human, a male with facial hair growth that suggested either rebellion against grooming standards or simple laziness, raised his hand. Actually raised his hand, like we were part of his lesson plan. Excuse me," he said. "Is this for a film project or something? Because Jenkins didn't mention anything about special effects in today's class. I blinked all four of my eyes in sequence. Was this human seriously asking if our military-grade invasion was a student production? "This is not a simulation," Vrel snarled, pointing his plasma rifle at the human instructor, a middle-aged male wearing something called a sweater vest. "You will all remain seated while we extract the necessary data from your primitive computing devices." That's when I noticed her. She sat 3 rows back, 4th seat from the left. Brown hair pulled into a functional ponytail, wearing some kind of green fabric jacket over a dark shirt, and carrying a backpack that had seen better days. Nothing remarkable about her appearance, not by human standards. But her eyes? Those were different. While every other human in that room registered fear, confusion, or disbelief, this one was analyzing. I watched her gaze sweep over our formation, counting us, I realized, assessing our weapons, noting our positions. Her hand drifted toward her backpack with the kind of casual movement designed not to attract attention. Professional. This human moved like a professional. "Designation?" I subvocalized to Korn over our tactical channel. Her sensory stalks flickered as she accessed the student roster we'd downloaded during infiltration. Maya Torres, age 22, 3rd-year student, major in military history with a minor in something called tactical psychology. Prior background includes 4 years in their armed forces, specializing in asymmetric warfare training. Oh no. "Commander," I tried to warn Vrel, but he was too busy grandstanding, weapons sweeping across the terrified students while he delivered his standard subjugation speech. He loved this part, the moment when primitive species realized their cosmic insignificance. Maya Torres, meanwhile, had smoothly unzipped her backpack and was rummaging inside with the kind of focused calm I'd only seen in elite shock. Troopers. What could a human possibly have in a student bag that would concern a fully armed Carthexian strike team? The answer came about 15 seconds later. "Spread out!" Vrel commanded, and we began our standard suppression formation. Thex moved to cover the left flank, Korn took position at the rear exit, and I advanced toward the windows to secure our extraction route. That's when Maya Torres pulled out a textbook. I almost laughed. Almost. Then she stood up, drawing every armored head in her direction, held the book at shoulder height, and hurled it directly at Thex's cranial sensor array with enough force to make a whistling sound through the air. The impact wasn't damaging. Our armor could withstand small arms fire. But Thex's sensors, those were designed for open battlefield conditions, calibrated for long-range targeting, not for sudden close-quarters impacts. The book, some massive tome about European military campaigns, struck his sensor cluster dead center. His targeting reticle went haywire, painting threats across the entire room. His rifle's safety protocols kicked in, preventing him from firing into civilian clusters. And in that moment of confusion, Maya moved. She dove behind a row of desks, yelling something in rapid English that our translators parsed as tactical commands. "Windows are cover. Those rifles need line of sight. Disrupt their formation. Go, go, go." And here's the thing about humans that we'd never quite grasped from our orbital observations. They're not individually impressive. Their technology is primitive, their bodies are fragile, and their lifespans barely register on the galactic scale. But get them in a group, give them a leader who knows what they're doing, and their pack-bonding instincts kick in like some kind of ancient survival protocol. Suddenly, 17 terrified students became a coordinated resistance cell. Backpacks flew through the air, blocking our sensor sweeps. Desks scraped across the floor, creating improvised barriers. One particularly brave human male grabbed a chair and actually charged Specialist Korn, wielding it like some kind of primitive bludgeoning weapon. "Suppression fire!" Vrel screamed, and that's when everything went sideways. The plasma bolts lit up the room in strobing flashes of blue-white energy, but Maya had already orchestrated a response. She'd gotten the humans moving in patterns, chaotic to our sensors but clearly coordinated. They weren't running randomly. They were creating interference, blocking our clean shots, using their own bodies as mobile cover for each other. "Target the leader!" I shouted, finally identifying the real threat. I swung my rifle toward Maya's last known position, but she was gone. The human had somehow crossed 20 feet of open floor space during a firefight and taken cover behind a massive wooden desk that our sensors said was solid oak. Wood. Actual plant matter. And it was stopping our targeting locks because our weapons were calibrated for military-grade alloys, not organic classroom furniture. Thex finally cleared his sensors and opened fire at a cluster of students. The plasma bolt screamed across the room and then, impossibly, changed direction. It took me 3 full seconds to process what I'd seen. One of the humans, a female with bright blue hair, had grabbed what looked like a metal trash can lid and angled it at precisely the right trajectory to deflect the energy burst into the ceiling. Since when could humans calculate plasma reflection angles under combat stress? "Fall back to defensive positions," Vrel ordered, and I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. This wasn't how subjugations went. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to work. Maya Torres emerged from behind her desk fortress, and she was smiling. Actually smiling, like this was the practical examination she'd been training for her entire life. In her hands, she held what appeared to be a fire suppression device, one of those red cylinders humans kept in buildings for emergency purposes. "You want to know the problem with energy weapons?" she called out, her voice carrying across the chaos with surprising clarity. "They generate heat, lots of heat. And heat differentials? Those mess with your fancy sensors, something fierce." She triggered the fire extinguisher, and a cloud of white chemical foam exploded across our right flank. Korn's thermal imaging went completely blind. Vrel's environmental filters started screaming warnings about atmospheric contamination. And Thex? Poor Thex walked directly into a desk because his proximity alerts were lost in the sensory noise. The humans pressed their advantage. They had nothing but improvised weapons, textbooks, and chairs, and computer monitors, but they wielded them with surprising effectiveness. More importantly, Maya had taught them in approximately 90 seconds how to exploit our technological superiority. High-tech sensors meant vulnerability to environmental interference. Energy weapons meant heat signatures that gave away our positions. Powered armor meant we moved slower than unencumbered humans in close quarters. A male student, built like he'd spent significant time in their primitive weight training facilities, grabbed Thex from behind in some kind of restraint hold. Our combat protocols had never accounted for physical grappling. Why would they? Who gets close enough to grab a soldier in powered armor? "Get him off me!" Thex bellowed, spinning and trying to shake the human loose, but the male had wrapped his legs around Thex's torso and was systematically blocking every sensor port he could reach with what appeared to be chewing gum. Chewing gum. We were being defeated by confectionery adhesive. I fired 3 suppression bursts toward the windows, trying to herd the humans into a kill zone, but Maya was already countering. She'd organized them into fire teams, actual tactical units, and they were moving with purpose. One group created distractions, another group flanked, a third group prepared improvised barriers. "Where did she learn this?" I demanded over the tactical channel. Korn's response came through garbled by static from the fire-suppressant chemicals. Her military record indicates deployment to 12 conflict zones, instructor certification in unconventional warfare, 3 commendations for tactical innovation under fire. "And we're attacking her classroom?" I screamed. "Her actual literal classroom where she teaches tactical psychology?" The irony was not lost on me, even as a student hit me with a 3-ring binder hard enough to crack my visor's heads-up display. Vrel was backing toward the door now, his confidence evaporating like his plasma rifle's cooling system. "Tactical retreat. All units fall back to the extraction point." "Sir, we can still complete the mission," I argued, more from pride than actual belief. "We just need to adapt our formation to account for close-quarters human tactics and environmental interference protocols, and possibly request heavy armor support from the ship and—" Another fire extinguisher went off, this one directly in my face. The foam blocked every sensor I had, turned my helmet into a useless bucket of error messages. I stumbled backward, crashed into something solid, probably Korn, heard her curse in 3 languages simultaneously. When I finally cleared my visor, blinking all 4 eyes rapidly to restore vision, I found myself staring at Maya Torres from a distance of approximately 2 feet. She held another textbook, this one titled Advanced Guerrilla Warfare Tactics, and she had cocked it back like a primitive projectile weapon. "Here's your reading assignment," she said, and then everything went dark. I woke up 17 minutes later according to my armor's chronometer, cable tied to a desk with what appeared to be computer cords, surrounded by 17 humans who looked absolutely delighted with themselves. My helmet had been removed, placed carefully on a nearby chair like some kind of trophy. Thex sat next to me, similarly restrained, his armor's power cell disconnected with embarrassing efficiency. Korn was conscious but clearly concussed, her sensory stalks limp and unresponsive. And Vrel? Commander Vrel, veteran of 300 successful planetary subjugations, sat with his back against the wall, hands bound, while a human male with glasses lectured him about the psychological impact of invasion trauma on civilian populations. The instructor, the one in the sweater vest, was on his communication device, speaking rapidly to what I assumed were local authorities. "Yes, I understand how this sounds. Alien invasion of my Political Science 301 class. Yes, I'm completely serious. They have actual space armor. Torres subdued them with office supplies. I don't know how long we can hold them. They have energy weapons. Please hurry." Maya Torres sat on her desk, legs swinging casually, that same analytical expression on her face. When she noticed I'd regained consciousness, she offered what humans called a smile. "So," she said conversationally, "let me guess. You picked this target because it looked soft. Small college, no military presence, easy data extraction, minimal resistance expected. Am I close?" I said nothing. Partly from pride, mostly from shock. "The thing about teaching tactical psychology," she continued, "is you learn to read attack patterns. You guys telegraphed your entire strategy the moment you came through that door. Standard suppression formation, over-reliance on technological superiority, zero adaptation protocols for non-standard resistance. It's like you read the textbook on conventional warfare and then forgot humans wrote the book on unconventional warfare." "This was supposed to be a simple operation," I finally managed to say. "Yeah, well, I was supposed to have a quiet morning discussing Machiavelli's influence on modern political theory. Guess we both got surprised." She picked up my helmet, examining it with genuine curiosity. "This is actually pretty impressive technology. The sensor integration is way beyond anything our military has. But you know what? Technology doesn't win fights. Adaptation does. And you guys? You adapted like a species that's never faced real resistance before. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Human emergency response, probably accompanied by their military forces. I wondered what they'd make of their first confirmed extraterrestrial contact being 3 Carthexian soldiers hogtied by college students. For what it's worth, Maya said, her expression softening slightly, you probably would have succeeded at 99% of the targets you picked. Small colleges, research facilities, isolated communities, places where people weren't trained to fight back. But you got unlucky. You picked the one classroom on this entire planet where the instructor literally specializes in teaching people how to resist superior forces using inferior resources. She wasn't gloating, I realized. She was actually trying to be educational about it. Like this was a lesson she wanted us to learn. Your empire is going to hear about this, I said, trying to salvage some dignity from the situation. Oh, I'm counting on it, Maya replied. Because here's the thing about humans, you clearly didn't research thoroughly enough. We don't just fight when we're strong. We fight when we're weak. We fight when we're outnumbered. We fight when every logical calculation says we should surrender. And we teach other people how to fight too. She gestured to her students, who were busy documenting everything with their primitive camera devices. These kids are going to tell this story for the rest of their lives, about the day aliens invaded their classroom and got their asses handed to them by textbooks and fire extinguishers. And you know what? That story is going to spread through every human community, on every human world, until everyone knows that we're not easy prey. The blue-haired female who'd deflected the plasma bolt approached cautiously, still holding her trash can lid like a shield. Professor Torres, the cops are here. Also CNN, Fox, BBC, and what looks like every news organization in the Northern Hemisphere. Your phone has like 6,000 missed calls. Maya sighed, running a hand through her ponytail. Right, first contact protocol, going to be a whole thing. She looked back at me, and there was something almost apologetic in her expression. Look, I don't hate you guys personally. You were following orders, doing your jobs, but you need to take a message back to your empire. Earth isn't some backwater planet full of easy targets. We're survivors. We're innovators. And most importantly, we're stubborn as hell. The door burst open, revealing approximately 40 human security forces with weapons drawn. They looked simultaneously terrified and determined, a combination I was learning to recognize as quintessentially human. "Everybody stay calm," the lead officer shouted, which seemed like odd advice considering his hands were shaking so badly his weapon was creating a hazardous firing arc. "We're good," Maya called back. "Situation is contained. The visitors are restrained and disarmed. Nobody got seriously hurt except some furniture and Vrel's ego." "Her ego," Vrel muttered. "And it's not ego if you genuinely believe the intelligence reports." "Your intelligence reports said we were primitive," Maya countered. "That was your first mistake. We're not primitive. We're creative. There's a difference." As the security forces began carefully securing us for transport, I watched Maya Torres gather her textbooks, pack her bag, and prepare to face what would undoubtedly be the most significant first contact event in human history. She moved with the same calm efficiency she'd shown during the fight, like planetary-scale paradigm shifts were just another Tuesday in her academic career. The blue-haired student approached her, looking slightly dazed. "Professor, are we still having the midterm next week?" Maya actually laughed. "Emma, we just fought off an alien invasion with office supplies. I think I can push back the exam schedule." "Cool. Also, this is definitely going to be the weirdest extra credit opportunity I've ever had. As they led me out of room 204, past crowds of emergency responders and news cameras, and humans holding up communication devices to record everything, I caught one last glimpse of Maya Torres. She was speaking to a human in a military uniform, probably explaining the tactical breakdown of what had just occurred. And she was smiling. Not with cruelty or mockery, but with the satisfaction of someone who'd just passed her own final examination with top marks. The containment facility they transferred us to was located somewhere the humans called Nevada, which apparently meant nothing to outsiders, but triggered knowing looks among the humans themselves. The structure was buried underground, naturally, because humans had apparently learned paranoia from watching too many of their own entertainment productions about alien invasions. I sat in an interrogation room that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd watched exactly one spy thriller and called it research. Gray walls, metal table, chairs bolted to the floor, and a mirror that was obviously one-way glass. Subtle humans. Very subtle. The door opened, and I genuinely couldn't believe what I was seeing. Maya Torres walked in, carrying a tablet computer and 2 cups of what my translator identified as coffee. She'd changed from her classroom attire into something more official-looking. A dark suit that suggested she'd been conscripted into whatever governmental organization handled unexpected extraterrestrial prisoners. "You've got to be kidding me," I said. "Consultant," she replied, setting 1 coffee cup in front of me. "Turns out, when you successfully defend against the first confirmed alien attack in human history using nothing but academic supplies, the Department of Defense gets very interested in your skill set very quickly. It's been 6 hours since we were captured." "Yeah, well, bureaucracy moves fast when the entire planet just learned we're not alone in the universe." She sat down across from me, taking a sip from her own cup. "Also, full disclosure, I'm recording this conversation for 17 different intelligence agencies, 3 scientific organizations, and 1 very persistent podcast host who somehow got my personal number." I stared at the coffee. It smelled appealing, which was concerning. "Is it poisoned?" "It's Starbucks. Some would argue that's worse." She smiled slightly. "Relax, Lieutenant Crix. If we wanted you dead, we wouldn't waste good coffee on you first. We'd just open your cell to vacuum and call it a containment breach." The casual way she discussed my potential execution was somehow more terrifying than actual threats would have been. "So what happens now?" I asked, carefully not touching the coffee. "Your government dissects us for scientific research? Public executions to demonstrate human superiority? Ransom negotiations with the Carthexian Empire?" "Actually, none of the above. Right now, we're in what diplomats call an extremely delicate situation." Maya pulled up something on her tablet. "Your ship is still in orbit. They've made no hostile moves since you guys went radio silent, but they also haven't attempted communication. Meanwhile, every nuclear-capable nation on Earth has gone to high alert, which is about as relaxing as it sounds. They're waiting for our status report," I explained. "Standard protocol. If we don't check in within 24 hours, they'll assume we were compromised and initiate orbital bombardment of the target zone." Maya's expression didn't change, but I saw her fingers tighten slightly on her coffee cup. "That would be bad." "For you, certainly. For us, strategically questionable. Bombing a planet you intended to subjugate is terrible resource management. I meant bad for everyone, including your crew up there. Because if your ship fires on Earth, we fire back. And while our weapons might be primitive by your standards, we've had nuclear capabilities for 80 years. We've gotten pretty good at putting warheads where they need to go." I felt my stomach drop. All 3 of them. Mutually assured destruction. You'd really trigger an interplanetary war over one failed reconnaissance mission? In a heartbeat, Maya said without hesitation. That's another thing your intelligence reports probably missed. Humans are absolutely terrible at cost-benefit analysis when we're angry. We'll burn down our own house if it means the burglar doesn't get our stuff. She wasn't bluffing. I could see it in her eyes, that same calculating determination she'd shown in the classroom. This human would absolutely initiate a conflict that could devastate both species, not out of malice, but out of principle. So, what do you want from me? I asked carefully. Communication, cooperation, a chance to not turn first contact into first casualties on a planetary scale. Maya leaned forward. Here's the situation. Your empire thought Earth was easy pickings. You were wrong. But you're also not the only threat out there, are you? Your databases, which we're currently downloading from your armor's memory cores, suggest the galaxy is full of species that make you look friendly. My secondary eyes widened involuntarily. You cracked our encryption? 17-year-old kid in Mumbai did it in 40 minutes. Posted the solution on GitHub before we could stop him. Turns out your security protocols assumed nobody would think to try brute forcing with prime numbers derived from organic compound structures. Very advanced, very sophisticated, completely unprepared for human stubbornness combined with undergraduate-level chemistry knowledge. I wanted to argue, but honestly, that tracked. So you know about the Vrex Collective, I said quietly. The harmonious swarm, the species that make Carthexians look like friendly neighbors. We do now, and we're reasonably terrified. Thanks for asking. Maya pulled up holographic images from our databases, showing various hostile species that controlled different sectors of the galaxy. But here's the thing about humans. We're really, really good at learning from our mistakes. You guys taught us that Earth is on the galactic radar now. That's valuable information. Scary, but valuable. You want an alliance, I realized. You want us to teach you about galactic politics, technology, defense protocols. I want to not have my species enslaved or exterminated because we were too primitive to defend ourselves. Yes. If that requires working with the people who just tried to subjugate us, then so be it. Pragmatism over pride. She fixed me with that analytical stare again. But here's what I need from you first. I need you to help me contact your ship and convince them not to blow up my planet. Think you can manage that? Before I could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the facility. Maya's tablet lit up with urgent messages, and her expression shifted from controlled calm to immediate concern. What's happening? I demanded. She was already moving toward the door. Your ship just powered up weapons systems. We've got maybe 15 minutes before they open fire. She looked back at me. So here's where we find out if you're actually interested in not being responsible for billions of deaths. Coming? They uncabled my restraints, but kept 2 armed guards flanking me as we rushed through corridors filled with panicking humans. Scientists, military personnel, government officials, all moving with the coordinated chaos of a species facing potential extinction. We ended up in a command center that looked like someone had combined a military operations room with a university computer lab. Screens everywhere, displaying everything from satellite feeds to social media posts to what appeared to be mathematical equations calculating orbital strike trajectories. Commander Vrel was already there, similarly guarded, looking even worse than I felt. Thex and Korn stood nearby, all of us watching the main display showing our ship hanging in orbit like a sword of destiny about to drop. They're charging plasma cannons, a human technician reported, her voice shaking. Targeting solutions locked on 17 major population centers. We're reading energy signatures consistent with strategic-level bombardment. Can we shoot it down? Someone asked desperately. Not before they fire, another human replied. Our missiles would take 8 minutes to reach orbital altitude. They can fire in 3. Maya stood at the center of the chaos, somehow radiating calm despite the impending apocalypse. Lieutenant Crix, I need you to send them a message. Tell them you're alive, mission was unsuccessful, recommend immediate withdrawal and diplomatic negotiation. They won't listen to me, I said honestly. I failed the operation. My testimony is compromised. Then tell them something they will listen to. Maya's eyes locked onto mine. Tell them what you learned about humans today. Tell them that Earth isn't a subjugation target. It's a potential ally. Tell them that starting a war over one failed mission is strategically stupid. Captain Thorax doesn't respond well to being called stupid. Then let me talk to him. Every human in the room turned to stare at her. One of the military officers, an older male with more decorative metals on his uniform than seemed structurally sound, stepped forward. Professor Torres, with all due respect, you're a civilian consultant, not a diplomat. We have protocols for first contact situations. Your protocols were written assuming we'd have time to prepare, not 3 minutes to prevent orbital bombardment, Maya shot back. And I just spent 6 hours reading every piece of data we pulled from their systems. I know how Carthexian military command structures work. More importantly, I know how to talk to someone who just realized their easy operation turned into a complete disaster. She looked at Vrel. Commander, you outrank Crix. Will Thorax take your recommendation? Vrel's mandibles clicked nervously. Possibly. But I can't recommend alliance with a species that just humiliated my entire strike team with office supplies. The Empire would view that as weakness. Good thing I'm not asking you to recommend alliance, Maya said. I'm asking you to recommend strategic withdrawal pending further intelligence gathering. Tell him Earth has capabilities that weren't in the initial surveys. Tell him we have military training, defensive technologies, and a willingness to take significant casualties to defend our territory. All of which is completely true. And if he demands proof, Maya smiled. Tell him to review the combat footage from your armor cameras. Tell him one human instructor neutralized 3 armed soldiers using textbooks and fire extinguishers. Tell him we cracked your encryption in 40 minutes, downloaded your entire database, and are currently reverse engineering your plasma weapons in 17 different laboratories across the planet. You're doing what? I blurted out. Okay, that last part is only partially true. We're mostly just staring at them in confusion, while various scientists argue about physics. But he doesn't know that. 2 minutes to firing solution, the technician called out. Maya grabbed a communication headset from the nearest console. Commander Vrel, open a channel to your ship. Now. What happened next was probably the strangest diplomatic negotiation in galactic history. Vrel, under Maya's whispered coaching, opened communications with Captain Thorax. The captain's face appeared on the main screen, looking exactly like I'd expected. Furious, confused, and deeply suspicious of the entire situation. Commander Vrel, Thorax's voice carried the weight of 300 years of military authority. Your strike team has been silent for 6 hours. Explain your failure before I glass this primitive rock and everything on it. Captain, Vrel began, and I had to give him credit. His voice was steady. Recommend immediate tactical withdrawal. Target species demonstrates unexpected military capabilities. Initial intelligence severely underestimated human defensive capacity and tactical adaptability. You were defeated by primitives? The disgust in Thorax's voice could have melted hull plating. That's when Maya stepped into camera view, still wearing her consultant suit, looking absurdly calm for someone facing down an alien warship. Captain Thorax, my name is Maya Torres. I'm the primitive who defeated your strike team. And before you do something strategically catastrophic, I'd like to propose an alternative to mutual annihilation. The silence that followed was the kind of heavy quiet that happens right before something explodes, either literally or metaphorically. A human, Thorax finally said, his tone suggesting he'd just discovered something disgusting on his boot. A single human addresses a Carthexian battle captain directly. This breach of protocol alone justifies immediate bombardment. Yeah, about that, Maya continued, completely ignoring the death threat. Your bombardment will kill approximately 8 billion humans and trigger a nuclear response that will cripple your ship's shields before you can retreat to hyperspace. Our missiles might be primitive, but we've got thousands of them, and we're really motivated right now. So instead of turning this into the galaxy's most embarrassing mutual kill, how about we discuss why your intelligence reports were so catastrophically wrong? I watched Thorax's expression cycle through confusion, rage, and then, surprisingly, curiosity. You have 60 seconds to interest me before I fire, he said. Your empire targets weak species for subjugation. Smart strategy. Efficient. But your definition of weakness is flawed. Maya pulled up holographic displays showing various human conflicts throughout history. You assumed technological inferiority equals military weakness. Humans have been fighting asymmetric warfare for thousands of years. We've defeated superior forces so many times it's boring. We've won wars against enemies with better weapons, better armor, better technology. Want to know how? Enlighten me, primitive. Adaptation, innovation, sheer bloody-minded refusal to surrender even when logic says we should. She zoomed in on footage from the classroom fight. Your soldiers came equipped for conventional suppression. We countered with unconventional resistance. Your weapons were designed for open warfare. We fought in close quarters. Your armor provided technological superiority. We exploited its environmental vulnerabilities. She paused, letting that sink in. Now, imagine that scenario played out across 8 billion humans, fighting on terrain we've inhabited for 200,000 years, using tactics we've refined through countless wars. How many soldiers would you lose taking Earth? How many resources would you spend occupying a planet where every captured territory requires constant military presence? How long before other species notice the Carthexian Empire is overextended, bleeding resources into an unwinnable occupation? Thorax's expression had shifted completely. He was listening now, really listening, the way commanders do when someone points out a strategic nightmare they hadn't considered. You threaten resistance, he said, but there was less certainty in his voice. I'm promising it, Maya corrected. But I'm also offering an alternative. Your databases show dozens of species that make you look friendly. Species that would happily exterminate both our civilizations given the chance. You need allies, Captain. Real allies, not subjugated populations that rebel the moment you show weakness. And Earth could be such an ally? The skepticism was heavy, but not dismissive. We can offer something no subjugated species can. Innovation. Humans excel at solving problems in unexpected ways. Your strike team learned that today. Imagine what we could accomplish working together instead of killing each other over a failed reconnaissance mission. The command center was absolutely silent, except for the hum of computers and the barely audible countdown to weapons discharge. I watched Thorax calculating, weighing options, considering scenarios. "You defeated 3 soldiers," he finally said. "Hardly evidence of planetary defense capability." Maya's smile was absolutely terrifying in its confidence. Those 3 soldiers had complete tactical surprise, superior weapons, advanced technology, and detailed intelligence about the target. They still lost. Now imagine 8 billion of us, prepared, armed, and really, really angry about invasion attempts. How confident are you in that math, Captain? Another long pause. Then Thorax made a gesture I recognized as data request. "Commander Vrel, confirm the human's account. Did a single primitive defeat your strike team using improvised weapons?" Vrel's mandibles clicked in what might have been embarrassment or respect. "Confirmed, Captain. Subject demonstrated advanced tactical knowledge, environmental adaptation, and leadership capabilities that neutralized our technological advantages. Her force multiplier effect turned 17 civilians into an effective combat unit within minutes. And our encryption? Compromised within the hour by their computational networks," I added, figuring I might as well pile on. "They've downloaded our tactical databases, technology specifications, and command protocols. They know about the V-Rex. They know about the swarm. They know the galaxy isn't safe, and they're already preparing defensive strategies." Thorax was silent for nearly 30 seconds, which felt like approximately 10 years under the circumstances. "Stand down weapons," he finally ordered. "Commander Vrel, Lieutenant Crix, you will remain on the surface as diplomatic liaisons. Captain Thorax, out." The screen went dark, and the entire command center erupted in relieved chaos. Humans hugging each other, crying, laughing, some doing all 3 simultaneously. The military officer with the excessive medals looked like he wanted to either court-martial Maya or promote her, possibly both. Maya just stood there, looking exhausted and satisfied, like she'd just finished a particularly challenging final exam. "Did we just prevent an interplanetary war?" Thex asked, still processing everything. "We delayed it," Maya corrected. "Maybe permanently if we play this right. Maybe just until the next crisis. But today? Today we bought humanity. Time to prepare, and that's worth celebrating." She looked at me, extending her hand in that gesture humans use for formal greetings. "So, Lieutenant Crix, ready to be humanity's first alien friend? Fair warning, it's going to be a lot of paperwork, cultural misunderstandings, and awkward diplomatic incidents." I took her hand, carefully measuring my grip strength to avoid crushing her primitive skeletal structure. "After today, I'm prepared for humans to surprise me constantly. Good attitude. You're going to need it." 6 months later, I stood in the newly constructed Interspecies Relations Center in Geneva, watching Maya teach a class on tactical psychology to a mixed audience of human military personnel and Carthexian diplomatic liaisons. Her curriculum now included case studies in asymmetric warfare, human conflict history, and what she cheerfully called how to defeat technologically superior forces using whatever's available. The Carthexian Empire and Earth had signed what both sides carefully called a strategic cooperation framework, which was diplomat speak for "we're not going to war, but we're also not completely trusting each other yet." Trade agreements were being negotiated, technology exchanges were happening under careful supervision. And slowly, carefully, both species were learning that maybe the galaxy was big enough for cooperation instead of conquest. I'd been assigned permanent liaison duty, which meant splitting my time between teaching Carthexians about human unpredictability and teaching humans about galactic politics. It was exhausting, occasionally frustrating, and absolutely fascinating. "Lieutenant Crix," Maya called out from her podium. "Want to share your perspective on the initial assault? I'm trying to explain to these cadets why your standard suppression formation was so ineffective." I moved to the front of the class, facing 60 eager faces, some human, some Carthexian, all taking notes with varying degrees of competence. "The problem," I began, "was that we treated humans like every other species we'd encountered. We assumed primitiveness meant predictability. We assumed technological inferiority meant tactical weakness. We were catastrophically wrong on both counts." A human cadet raised her hand. "Sir, what would you do differently now?" I considered the question carefully. Everything. Different approach vector, different formation, different weapons protocols, different intelligence gathering. But honestly, if I had to assault Professor Torres's classroom again with perfect knowledge of what would happen, I'd recommend not doing it at all. The class laughed, that peculiar human sound that indicated amusement rather than threat assessment. "Why not?" a Carthexian liaison asked. "Because some battles aren't worth fighting," I said. "Because sometimes the greatest strategic victory is recognizing when you're about to make a terrible mistake and choosing a different path. That's what Earth taught the Carthexian Empire. Not that we're weak, but that strength comes in forms we'd never considered." After class, Maya and I walked through the facility's gardens, past sculptures representing unity between species and memorials, to the near disaster we'd narrowly avoided. "You know what's funny?" Maya said, watching human and Carthexian students studying together in small groups. "If your empire had approached us as potential allies instead of targets, we probably would have been falling over ourselves to cooperate. Humans love meeting new people. We're practically hardwired for it." "Noted for future reference," I replied. "Though I should mention Captain Thorax is still deeply embarrassed about the entire incident. He's currently advocating for completely revised first contact protocols across the Empire." "Good. Tell him I'm available for consulting if he wants to avoid future textbook-related defeats." We paused at a memorial stone, inscribed with words in both English and Carthexian script. "First contact, October 15th, 2025. The day we chose cooperation over conflict." "Think it'll last?" I asked. "The peace, I mean." Maya considered the question with her usual analytical approach. "Honestly, no idea. Humans are great at cooperation, but we're also excellent at finding new reasons to fight. And your empire has centuries of conquest programming to overcome. But you know what gives me hope?" "What?" "Every species in the galaxy that survived long enough to reach space did so because they learned to adapt. Humans adapted to survive on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Carthexians adapted to conquer a galaxy full of hostile species. Maybe, just maybe, we can both adapt to not being enemies." She smiled, that same confident expression she'd worn while defeating an alien invasion force with office supplies. "Besides, if we can survive first contact being an accidental classroom invasion defeated by textbooks, we can probably survive anything." I clicked my mandibles in amusement. "You humans have a saying about that, don't you? Something about what doesn't kill you? Makes you stronger," Maya finished. "Or in this case, makes you rethink your entire approach to galactic politics. Either way, I'm counting it as a win." As the sun set over Geneva, casting long shadows across a planet that had recently discovered it wasn't alone in the universe, I reflected on the absolute insanity of how first contact had actually played out. We'd come to subjugate. We'd been defeated by college students, And somehow, impossibly, that failure had opened the door to something better than anyone could have planned. Humans. Absolutely impossible to predict, remarkably difficult to defeat, and apparently surprisingly good allies once you stopped trying to conquer them. Who knew?